Welcome, everyone. This is another episode where I interview some people here on ofthereturn.com. And what I have is an old student of mine that I'll have him introduce himself in a minute. But I thought that his story and this conversation will be beneficial to all the people watching. So please stick around. Make sure that you hear this story and really reflect on the way that God and people's personal example can change or influence the people around them. John, how are you?
Doing well, sir. How are you?
Good, thank you. Maybe you could just start off with telling us who you are.
Of course. So I was a former student of Notre Dame. I graduated in 2015. I was never in Mr. Haddad's class, though. However, we actually met at Kairos, and you were my small group leader, and I was beginning my conversion process. I was raised Lutheran in a Lutheran household. And then through my experience at Notre Dame, as well as the Kairos retreat, and then some of the religious classes that I experienced at Notre Dame, I ended up making the decision to convert to Catholicism.
Beautiful. And what type of things who are you today? So we're here after high school.
Sure.
Who are you today?
I was reflecting on this a little while ago. I just went home to Chicago for Thanksgiving, and it has been coming up on a decade now, like a little under a decade since I graduated. And the one thing that I will say, I know no one's going to believe me when they watch this, but time does pick up as you get older.
Oh,
Before you know it, it will be a decade, and you will be going to your Notre Dame 10-year reunion. So it goes by fast. Enjoy it. So a little bit about me. When I was at Notre Dame, played sports, was on the football team, boxed as well, loved all of it. I would say enjoy the moments that you are having because they are incredibly fun. But when I was at Notre Dame, one thing I did want to do a little differently compared to some of my peers, I decided to actually go into the military, specifically the Air Force following high school. I served in the Air Force for 4 years following my time at Notre Dame once I graduated. Like I was telling you, I was a 3 Delta 1X2 in the Air Force. That's a very Air Force-y way of saying a network engineer. I worked on computers. After that, I spent 4 years at Grand Forks Air Force Base up in North Dakota. Got very cold up there. And then I deployed out of there twice. So I actually went to the UAE once. My job as a network admin or cyber transporter was to support high flying ISR platforms. Okay, so that was drones for the Air Force.
wow.
Our slice of the maintenance pie was to handle the cockpit or the ground support station that the pilots would fly these drones in. I was tech support for these guys. So I did that for 4 years, really liked my time. While I was there, though, I'm going to steal a line from a buddy of mine. When I deployed and during my time that I actually spent serving, he described it as working at a very hot airport, which I think is a very fitting way of putting it. So I had this burning desire to do more. And as I'm sure you're all too familiar with, when you're in the military, you don't feel as though you have control in your life, right? You are absolutely unequivocally government property.
Every minute.
Yep. So when I learned about what becoming a defense contractor entailed, it became very attractive to me. And once I learned that I could do that as a career path, I spent every waking second preparing my time to ETS or separate from the military. I always knew I did not want to do the 20 years. I wanted to do my 4, get out, and increase the amount of value that I could provide with my life. So the biggest benefit to becoming a defense contractor, at least for me, was I felt as though the control was placed back in my life. I felt as though I was back in the driver's seat. And what I liked about it was I could choose exactly where to work. And as I'm sure you're familiar, like when you have orders cut, you go where they tell you, whether it's North Dakota or Iraq or wherever, right? My goal was to go to the Middle East specifically. I wanted to do more and experience more. So I was only applying to apply my tech skill set that I obtained in the Air Force along with my security clearance to work as a defense contractor, doing downrange tech support for a fairly large defense contractor company. I did that for about 3 years. I actually was in Syria when the Afghan pullout happened. I had missed it by a
Oh,
little. I
wow.
was supposed to be in Afghanistan when that went down. Um, However, when I was in Syria, of all places, um, the only thing to do when you're deployed is lift and work out. There's not a
Mhm.
whole lot going on. So I had become a pre-workout junkie along the way, along with everybody else around me. And I had noticed that not only is everybody consuming pre-workout and energy drinks or Rippets that you may be familiar with, they're like these giveaway energy drinks that they give to guys that are deployed, like as a morale boost. Everyone's pounding these things. Um, some of your students may be unfortunately familiar with the habit of dipping, but I used to be a dipper, and it's a horrible habit. You ought to not do it, right? Notre Dame preaches this big. I know they do, but
Mhm.
I had missed putting something in my lip to go to the gym. That was my pre-workout at the time. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was some sort of solution or product that took all the benefits of pre-workout, put it in a dippable pouch, and negated all the adverse health side effects that came along with chewing tobacco? And at first, I thought I would just like to buy this for myself and my buddies who are also in the gym every day. But then when I started Googling around and found out that this product did not exist, I knew I wanted to build it. And the way we put it, Send It Supplements, or the company that I'm now the president and founder of, was founded from a fire base in Syria. And we make the world's first and only dippable pre workout powder. So it comes in little pouches that you put in your lip, like chewing tobacco, but without nicotine or tobacco of any kind. And I've been doing that now for the past 3 years. Um,
Wow.
I recently went full time with the company 8 months ago. So I quit my defense contracting job that was now in the States. Once the Afghan pullout happened, I no longer had a job downrange. So I had to come back to the United States, Kona side. And I came to a very pivotal point in my life where I knew I had to make a decision, and where prayer involved a lot of the deciding factors that went into it, to where I knew I had to choose between my business growing or my defense contractor career growing. And it took a lot of reflection, a lot of prayer, but 8 months ago I made the decision to go all in with this, and walk away from my clearance and my cushy defense job and become an entrepreneur full time.
Now, with that clip, with people watching this,
Mhm.
we get a clip of the success in your life. And I just want to be a witness
Mhm.
that even in high school, uh, what I'm hearing is no surprise.
I appreciate this.
As soon as you came on the scene at the Kairos retreat, I think it was a dinner or a lunch. Um, Now I'm going to be very vague with
Mhm.
Kairos because it is a secret.
Of course.
And so you may or may not have the opportunity to speak, but I heard you speaking, but I won't say if it's formal and informal or anything like that. And when you spoke at lunch or at dinner or whatever, I asked the teachers, who is that kid? Because you had a commanding presence,
Mhm.
you were a leader, you were strong, and there wasn't this uh, ambiguity in anything that you were saying. So really, to hear about your success now is no surprise. But I know it's still a lot of hard work for you. So
No, I appreciate it, sir.
you know, definitely proud of you. Um, I have to say it before we move on. Thank you for your service,
You as
uh,
well.
and thank you. And you know, I'm glad that you took all these skills and yet felt that you needed to grow. And you mentioned prayer, which is probably
Mhm.
going to be a big part of this conversation.
Of course.
Uh, but that is, you kind of gave that, who are you? And I'm
Mhm.
just giving you a little of who I think you were. We lost contact, obviously. I don't keep contact with some of the high school students I had, but you were someone I reached out with a few years ago because I wanted to see what you were going to do
Mhm.
in life. So I hope you like compliments. You know, you
I've
own
gotten
your
better
own,
at accepting them.
definitely. You own your own company. So I'm just hoping you'll give me a Lamborghini one day. So I'm just, you know, laying it on thick. So
Yep.
yeah, definitely. So we mentioned Kairos retreat, and that's a retreat that typically happens high school, senior year, or sometimes even in college.
Mhm.
Just in general, and without giving out the secrets, can you maybe talk about your experience from what you remember of being part of Kairos?
It was one of the most transformative experiences of my young adult life, by far done. Um, of my time spent at Notre Dame, it was by far one of the most memorable. One of the things, in my opinion, that Notre Dame does very well is instill a sense of camaraderie amongst the students and amongst the dons, right? Um, that is amplified in a Kairos environment tremendously. What I think is incredible about it is, and I would argue this is more important now than when I was in high school, right? Cell phones are a part of everybody's life. And the idea of not having access to your cell phone or laptop or any connection to the outside world amplifies and focuses what is immediately in front of you.
Yeah.
And to me, what I took from it was that, to me, is what I try to derive from my prayer. It's a time of day when I focus on directly what is in front of me. It is a quiet moment with me and God where I reflect on my life and my day and my goals and things that I fell short in, quite honestly, and things that I could be doing better. And what I took from Kairos is it is important to touch base with God, at least to me, once a day. And I fall short of that. But to have it be quiet and to have it be focused is
Mhm.
tremendously important. That was the big thing that I took away from Kairos. Another big factor was you don't know what's going on in the lives of other people. And that is amplified tremendously when you are surrounded by your peer group and you learn very intimate parts about their life that you would have never guessed they are experiencing or going through. And it is so important, at least to me, to learn that lesson very early because this is something that I still struggle with. Everyone makes assumptions, everyone makes quick judgments. I need to work on this more than anybody. But when I saw guys that I was friends with, or guys that I boxed with, or guys that I played football with, that were going through a tumultuously difficult part of their life without it even being on my radar, was eye opening to me. And then if you expand that idea to your peer group at work, people you may share an office with, people you may share a college dormitory with, everyone has something going on in their life. Some people are just better at hiding it than others. And Kairos really, really taught me that.
Beautiful. And that's really, like I said, where you came on the radar for me. It was a big high school.
Mhm.
You were never in my class, and I think I was hired there, and I think you were probably already a senior or something like that
Sounds
anyway.
right. Yep.
2 year, maybe a junior, I'm not sure. So with that, I did hear you speak, and again, I'm being vague, so no one knows how it works there. But I did get to hear you speak, and I was telling you before, this is a story that I still tell my students today, or Bible studies,
Mhm.
or whatever. I was just always impressed with your story. You know what I'm referring to, so I'll just be vague, but or I'll just come out and ask, I guess. Can you tell me about prayer and the morning announcements and all that, and how that helped form you, or whatever the maybe I'm lacking in term, but
Oh,
what did all that do for you?
one of the things that I quite honestly missed from my time at Notre Dame is the idea of communal prayer. Prayer, as you become older, at least for me, um, has become more of a intimate experience with God. Right, it is usually me bowing my head at the end of a long work day and reflecting on things that I accomplished, things that I could have done better, challenges that I have in front of me. But it is me talking to God in a quiet environment. One of my favorite parts about Notre Dame is the idea that prayer is a communal activity, and the idea that every class and that every mass and that every lunch and that every communal activity begins with prayer is something that I miss in my life, quite honestly. And what I took from it, at least, was it always set the standard and the reminder, at least to me, that God is always watching, which I think is something that's very, very important. Um, I try to view life as a test. And I think it's very important that if you view life this way, that your standards as a man begin to rise. And setting the expectation of prayer before you begin any endeavor or any challenge or pursue any goal, that you are not in this alone. And this idea becomes amplified when every other man around you is praying as well, is involved in the communal activity that you are performing as well. Is something that I wish I still had in my life. Um, but it was incredibly impactful to me at Notre Dame. What was also new to me is, and you're familiar with it, but some of the students that are listening to this may not be. I was actually raised Lutheran, so I got confirmed at Edison Park Lutheran Church, in Chicago, and then when I came to Notre Dame, I was not Catholic, and then through some of the religious classes, and then my Kairos experience, and then my peer group as well, I found that the Catholic belief system and doctrine better aligned with my beliefs, and actually converted as well. I'm not going to share the name of the gentleman, but he's someone that you would know just for privacy reasons.
Yeah.
He acted as my sponsor, or someone who took me along the path of becoming Catholic, someone who's already confirmed Catholic. And Notre Dame and the act of communal praying and some of the differences between a Protestant upbringing versus a Catholic upbringing really shined light onto the idea that this may be something for me. One of those being the idea of ritualistic prayer, right? I was not taught to say Hail Marys and the Apostles' Creed with a Lutheran upbringing. That was something that was new to me when I walked into Notre Dame. And it was something that I found that saying the same thing over and over again as the constant standard reminder for how my prayer ought to go was something that was impactful to me. But I still take my Protestant upbringing when I talk to God. It's still a conversation that I have with him. What I like to do is I will normally begin and end the prayer with those more routine styles of prayer, where I will say a Hail Mary and an Our Father in the way that I was taught at Notre Dame, and then in a Catholic environment as well.
No, that's great. I'm making a whole bunch of videos now.
Okay.
And one of them is on prayer. And it was actually when I was in the Army. All we did was talk about religion. And one day, one of my he was the E4 and I was the E4, but he was in like 20 years, so he had some sort of seniority, And people in the Army know why that's funny. But one day he came in, he said, "You'll never believe what I wanted to do yesterday, or what I wanted to do yesterday," something like that. Well, what? And he says, "I wanted to pray." Well, why didn't you? It was just,
Sure.
I was 18 years old. I just did not understand. Well, why didn't you?
Right.
And he said, "I don't know how." And that's another story that stayed with me over 20 years now, But that's why I always like those prayers that are already written for you. If you don't know how, it's okay.
It's like
You
an
know?
SOP.
Yeah. And someone like me, my vocabulary, people are going to find out real quick. It's not up there. But there are certain prayers that express the way I feel better than I will ever put into words. So I love those prayers as well. And then the informal is great too. I just thought I'd share that because that's another story that's always stayed with me. If we could just talk just a little bit more about the conversion to Catholicism. Can you tell me what was the first trigger, or what sent you down that path? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Trying to think now. I found that the way that Catholics interpret Scripture, specifically the Old Testament, better aligned with my belief system,
Okay.
what I thought was true to me. One thing that I will say is, to anyone that is listening to this, I do not want to come off as preachy. It's the last thing I want to do. These are my beliefs and how I see the world and my relationship with God. And through me becoming more mature and me seeing more of the world and me becoming more worldly, I have met and shared a prayer with people who interact with God in a completely different medium and practice than I do.
Mhm.
I I have been to places and prayed in front of a Buddha, right? Where it did not feel as though I wasn't talking to God. It still felt as though I was putting my head down at the end of the night and talking to the Catholic
Right,
Western
right.
interpretation of how I view God. It still felt the
Yeah.
same way. But again, these are just my beliefs. I felt as though that how Catholic or the Catholic Church interprets old scripture or the Old Testament through a more figurative lens, that these are stories is the wrong word, but stories that are supposed to represent greater truths and have characters that are supposed to represent archetypes in mankind as a
Right,
whole
right.
was a was an ideology that made sense to me. The belief system that I was taught in a Lutheran environment was there was this guy named Noah. He built this really big boat,
Mhm.
marched all the animals two by two on it, and that's why there are giraffes and mosquitoes and chimpanzees and every other animal on the planet now, because this happened. They read it like a textbook. When
Right.
I learned that Catholics tend to see this as a figurative story that is supposed to represent greater truths in our story as human beings, that was an idea that was really the catalyst for me to really consider this Catholic ideology and this Catholic
Okay.
belief system a lot more, to give it a lot more priority.
Beautiful. And how did your family respond when it looked maybe the first time you said you wanted to convert or a new way of thinking or
Not well.
okay.
Um, I'll say this too for all the young men that are listening.
Mhm.
As you get older, and I'm sure joining the military was no different for you, you are going to want to do some things that your peer group and your family group around you have some very strong opinions about. And in my opinion, that is a good thing. It means that you are forging a path that is uncommon amongst your family or your peer group. And so long as it improves their life or the lives of others around you, that is a good thing. Um, but change is scary to the majority of people.
Yes.
And when my very Lutheran mother, who saw her son be baptized, confirmed, and receive First Communion in the same church that her other son did, it was very jarring for her to hear me say, "Hey, I want to move past this and become Catholic," as it would for any mother, right?
Of course, of
Um,
course.
but some personal growth that I'm still trying to work on is when I was younger, I used to be quicker to anger, especially with the people that I'm talking about. And I know that that is something that some of the young men that are listening to this will resonate with, because I was an angry young man in high
Yeah.
school as well. It's part of it. Um, don't let that deter you from doing what is right. At least what I found in my faith journey, and really my journey as a man, is when I pursued things I knew what were that I knew were best for me, despite the hesitation and reservation of those around me, that even if I didn't accomplish what I was going to set out to accomplish, I would still become a better version of myself along the way. And I would put the footnote in that so long as what you are doing is helpful to others, it is important that you do things that you feel are best for you, because at the end of the day, it is your life. God gave it to you. And if you feel that the best path forward is to become Catholic or join the military or join the Peace Corps or live in another country for an extended period of time, you get one life. God gave it to you. You ought to pursue what you believe is best for you. And in my opinion, as you get older, like to all the young men that are listening to this, that their parents hopefully are very impactful people in their lives. In my opinion, the job of parents is to become less impactful as you become older. The whole point of rearing children is so that they can one day become their own people and make decisions and choices themselves. However, you will see your parents not as parents, but as people as you get older. It's a transformation that's coming around the corner, if not has already happened. And when you see them through that lens, you realize that they too are people. And even though they are saying one thing, it is difficult for them to actually adhere to it.
Yeah.
And I will struggle with the exact same things when I have children, because I am a man and I'm a human
Oh,
being.
yeah.
And the anger that I felt as a 17, 18-year-old wanting to be Catholic and wanting to join the military and wanting to do all these big things, like the older I get, the more I realize my mom was just being a mom.
Of
And
course.
And I love her more now because she was scared for me, rightfully so. The
Yeah.
military is scary. You changing your identity is scary, especially from a religious perspective.
Yeah.
But on the other side of it now, her and I have a better relationship because I am truer to myself versus the opposite perspective of me adhering to them and then being in more angry, bitter, and jaded version of myself a decade later, right? That's not beneficial to anybody. So this game that you are about to play as you become like adults, as you graduate high school and charge into the world, you're gonna bump into things, but it's okay. Like just pursue things with all your might and do things that you feel are best for you. And a decade's gonna go by before you know it, and you'll be happy that you took the path less traveled by, in my opinion.
You said that earlier that it's almost your 10 year.
Yep.
I'm going to warn you from now, bro. The 30s will go by faster than any time so far anyway of your life. So
Yep.
buckle up because it gets faster. So for all the older people out
Yep.
there.
Yep.
But what you're saying, carving out your own path.
Mhm.
We see a lot of themes when God calls us, or we just, or like you said, you want to live your life in accordance to what is good for you, and what if God is calling you towards a certain life, it's going to be good for you. At least that's how what I believe.
Agreed.
And God has this habit, or He enjoys to do. I don't know. I got to ask Him.
Mhm.
He's going to take you through an adventure. You know, He's going to give us some heartaches. He's going to because He's testing us. He's making us stronger.
Mhm.
Um, you will not believe. I've been teaching theology, campus minister, this and that for over 15 years. And I get grandparents of students that come and talk to me sometimes, which is fine.
Mhm.
And they don't learn this lesson that you're saying now. They didn't learn it till they were 50.
Yep.
And back in the day, they used to make you marry some person. So from the start at 17, 16, they're marrying this person. They're stuck with this. They never had a chance to grow, and it's just more and more resentment and heartache, and all these other issues. Anyway, but it's good that you identify it now at your age, so you can live a more fuller life. That's
Yep.
my opinion. And hopefully people listen to that.
Yes.
So let me ask you just one more. The other ones are going to be very quick questions, but and okay, so I'm older than you. And like I said, I've been teaching for a long time, and now I'm trying to do this online ministry because I want to do as much as I can for God. What I notice is every couple of years, the generations change.
Mhm.
So hopefully, maybe there's a priest or two that will watch this one day, a nun, a campus minister, a mom or dad. If they want to reach out to someone in your generation, a child, grandchild, student, whatever,
Mhm.
what tips can you give us?
I'll speak to the young man perspective because this was something that even during my Lutheran upbringing that I really struggled with. I heard a sermon from a pastor at the church that I went to, and the message of the sermon, a common theme was the meek shall inherit the earth. You heard this idea over and over again, right? And when I heard that as a 12-year-old, I thought the Christian thing really wasn't for me. And I say that because all the men that I aspired to be like when I was 12, my dad, my grandfather, some of the other mentors that I had when I was 12, none of them I would consider meek at all. So if this Christian thing is about being meek, I'm probably not supposed to be here.
Right.
This idea kind of rattled around in my brain for a little bit. It was only until I got older that I was actually in Afghanistan, of all places, just kind of talking about a guy who was also very religious. And I brought this idea up, the meek shall inherit the earth. What he told me was that is actually a mistranslation. It better the word that is more accurate to the English version of meek in this case is pruis, right? because the story that was supposed to be, or the message that was supposed to be relayed, was in the audience that this message was written for. It was a Greek audience. And in Greek culture, there are three kinds of horses: a racehorse, a workhorse, and a war horse. And for a workhorse has no no gumption of its own and only takes direction from its rider. A racehorse is the exact opposite. No direction from the rider, but sheer aggression, right? I want to win the race as fast as possible, move as fast as possible in that direction. However, a war horse or a Pruis horse has to have a combination of both of these things. It needs to take direction from the rider, but also make decisions on its own accord to dodge bombs and bullets and swords and knives, right? Because it's on a battlefield. And the original message of that parable was that God wants you to be Pruis. God wants you to take his graces and his messages and listen to him, but also make decisions on your own. You are your own man. He gave this life to you. You ought to chart it how you believe it's best. And in my opinion, organized religion as a whole misses a lot of young men because they don't share this message. They when I was young, at least in this one case, I felt as though that God wanted me to be a doormat, wanted me to be Pruis and meek, wanted me to be a meek man. That was an idea that I did not resonate with. So if there is a church leader or a pastor or someone in organized clergy that wants to appeal, especially more to young men, which I would argue is more important than anything, because I mean, you know these numbers better than I do. More women go to church than young men.
Mm-hmm.
Preach to them that idea that God not only wants you to chart a good life, but chart it on your own accord with responsibility, that he wants you to choose a good life and act accordingly, that you should not be docile in life, that you ought to chart your own course and truly be the master of your fate.
Yeah. Just for people listening, right now in the church, at least in the Catholic Church, this is the explosive argument: is we need more men in the church. Not just because you're a man. We need examples of strong men, because I think in the 60s or 70s, before my time, you get all these Jesus movies where he's not really that strong. It's just kind of, I'm scared because it's Jesus. I don't want to say the wrong thing. But it's just not. It's not as strong as the gospel, or what he says in the gospel. So now we're seeing a resurgence of, we want to bring back masculinity into the church, because it's for sure lacking, and we see a lot of young people around the world going to Islam because they're strong.
Because there's more strength.
Yeah, more strength. And we even see this a little bit with Orthodoxy. They talk really hard, like hardcore, and people are attracted to that. So it's interesting. So you have your finger right on the pulse there.
I'll say this too. What I never forget about the Gospels, there was a time when the Son of God, the man who could do no harm, turned over tables.
Yeah.
And implemented violence, had a whip in his hand, because he had to do what is right.
Yeah.
And what I take from that is to not be a violent man, but to be ready to be one if necessary.
Yeah.
Right? To have a dragon and be able to slay it, to be in control of your anger as a man. That when you figure out and I'm still working on this, when you figure out how to do that as a man, you become closer with God, and in my opinion, you lead a more righteous life.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Yep. When a man is a man,
Yep.
Yeah. Let me ask you one last one, is just how can, and if you say no, then no. This is just for a general audience, not necessarily students, but if anyone, maybe, do you have any social media, you want to shout out your business, anything like that?
Yeah. If you're interested in the product, it is called Send It Supplements. Moving forward, we're about to go through a rebrand, so you may see this as Stiff Lip Supplements. Currently, we are at Send It Sups on everything. And if you are interested, and maybe you're a dipper, you can go to www.senditsups.com and get the dippable pre-workout if you want to give it a shot.
Now that's for any age, or is that limited? Is that an 18 and up thing?
No. So it contains no tobacco, no nicotine. So
Okay.
if you're old enough to buy pre-workout, right, which I took plenty of when I was at Notre Dame when I was in high school, right, you can purchase this product. There's
Okay.
no age verification.
All right, great. So just in case, get your parents' permission
Sure.
before checking it out. But also, I'll have links below. I'm going to put this on YouTube. I'll have links to your social media and all that good stuff for your business.
Well, thank you.
And people could check that out. Look, I really appreciate your time. And really, when I heard you speak about prayer and how it changed your life and your family's life, again, I've been telling your story for years, just because of how well thought out it was and impactful, at least for me, impactful in my life. So thank you for having the courage to share who you are, and then to also come back and just share it to the world.
Thank you for having me. It means the world. You guys are God's work at that place. I mean it.
Definitely. Thank you. All right. So we're going to have about 2 seconds of awkward pause, but just stay with me and then we'll be